Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. I'm your host, JJ Kitchen, and we are finally back after a couple-week hiatus between multiple trips, between work, everything else that was going on is crazy. Nothing really crazy happened in those past couple of weeks, but the good thing that we can all talk about here tonight, ACC Media Days went on here this past week, which was a really good thing overall for the ACC. Some news came out about North Carolina. We'll talk about that conference realignment, anything in response to that. Bill Belichick officially in his first turn at the University of North Carolina and the Tar Heels. But Pat Narduzzi talked about a number of different topics during the week. He talked about the injury reports, which you can imagine. I tweeted out, which was pretty funny. The injury reports must be a crazy thing for Pat Narduzzi moving forward here in the coming weeks, as it's certainly something that's going to be talked about in his future tenure here. But also, Pat Narduzzi talked about general managers, sat down with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and talked about Doug Whaley being the general manager in name only. But as the season goes on, as we get closer to the season, there might be two people already on staff who are ready to be named general managers. We'll talk about that tonight. My thoughts about, is that a good thing or a bad thing for Pitt, and should they hire outside? We'll go over that. Pat Narduzzi also talked about the rivalry games, why it's so important to play West Virginia, Penn State, but morely talked about West Virginia as they're the ones on the schedule. And we talk about the headlines tonight. The headlines a week away. The Pitt Panthers are going into the fall camp. Quarterback competitions. Are there any real competitions? Pat Narduzzi squashed that, but we'll go over and what my thoughts are for during the week, and we'll go over everything here. First up, the show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. Again, the great sponsorship with Hail to Pitt, the icy like can. Make sure you go in there today. They are restocked again. You guys have done a phenomenal job from top to bottom supporting Colonial Beer, which has been a great sponsor to the show, a great relationship. Brian, Bill and the whole crew there have been truly phenomenal. I can tell you, Bill and Alan are truly two great individuals. People who support the University of Pittsburgh are pretty phenomenal season ticket holders, to say the least. But when you go into Colonial Beer, make sure you ask for those guys. They're willing to talk to anybody. They love talking Pitt football, and more importantly, talking about the University of Pittsburgh. So make sure you go in there, talk to them, and make sure for any parties, your tailgate's coming up here pretty soon, make sure you go see Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. Now, the show is also sponsored by Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. Call them today at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Brian Thompson, truly one of the greatest people you'll meet. I got to see him at the spring game during the season last year. A phenomenal individual, someone who loves, again, the Pitt Panthers, especially Pitt football, Pitt basketball. Does a great job as a season ticket holder, an Alliance 412 member, and an athletic fund director contributor. He's done a great job there. But Brian is truly the best because he cares about you, the individual. The great thing about him compared to large law firms is he cares about you, the individual, and making sure you get the results that you need for your case. Again, make sure you go see Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson. Call them at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Last but not least, this show is sponsored by the Cake Collection, the coffee brand by Austin Kitchen. Go to www.thekingscraft.com. A very cool bag. The Cake Collection. Never been a coffee guy my whole life, but man, perfectly. The AK Espresso is personally my favorite. It gets me going every morning. All I do is need one cup of coffee. Gets me going the whole day. I don't need 2 or 3 cups, adding all those extra calories. You don't need to do that. Again, and also, too, the cool design. The Cake Collection, very cool design they came up with. Plays for the Seattle Mariners organization. He's done a phenomenal job. A Mount Lebanon alum, and also, too, a Coastal Carolina national champion. Make sure you go see the Cake Collection coffee brand by Austin Kitchen at www.thekingscraft.com. Again, we're going to get going here tonight. If you want to drop down below, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the show. Also, to the super chat button is down below as well. Make sure you guys hop down there if you want to get your question read before anybody else's up on the screen. So let's see here. First up, one of the things, ACC Media Days. You know, a lot of discussion throughout the week of multiple things, multiple topics. ACC, for instance, teams that were settled. Clemson and Florida State settled their lawsuits. News comes out from on three. Whether how much that is talked about, I can imagine that there's still a lot of conversations going on. North Carolina potentially trying to gain steam to add into the SEC. We don't know how far along that is. I think we've been talking about that for quite some time. Until we get some legitimate reports, I'm certainly not going to put too much stock into it. I know, like any other school in the ACC, the Big 12, it doesn't matter. Even the Group of Five, we've seen a lot of schools trying to buy their way into conferences. SMU certainly got their way in there. It's been certainly a great ad for the ACC. Memphis tried to make their way into the Big 12 along with the ACC. ACC did not want the Memphis Tigers. Neither does the Big 12 as it stands right now. But you look at ACC Media Days. First off, the conversation was really brought around Pat Narduzzi bringing Kyle Lewis, All-American, Desmond Reed, All-American, Lyndon Cooper, who I would really think to be a captain this year on the offensive line for the Pitt Panthers. And lastly, hometown hero and Whitfield alum, Javon McIntyre, another senior down there at ACC Media Days. The conversation was really brought around why Eli Holstein was not brought to that whole dilemma. For starters, Pat does things the way Pat does it. And do I agree with everything that Pat Narduzzi does? Certainly not. I think there's a lot of things that he does that just irk the hell out of me. For starters, he talked about during the ACC Media Days about how, they didn't lose anybody to the portal that they didn't want to lose. They enhanced their roster. I'm okay with the comment about enhancing your roster. But the thing that gets me every time about Pat, he's got to be able to throw some type of bullshit garbage in there that says, we didn't lose anybody that we didn't want to lose. All he had to say is that we enhanced our roster. We're better than last year. It's not hard to add in those comments, but Pat being Pat always has to add in those certain comments. I don't know what he gains from those type of comments, but it is what it is. It's Pat being Pat. I mean, it certainly works out to sometimes, but I mean, at the end of the day, he's a confident guy in himself, but, I can understand you're not happy about some guys leaving. I can assure you this football team would have been very happy to have a guy like Sincere Edwards still on the roster. So you look at those type of comments, you question that overall. But Pat Narduzzi did talk about why Eli Holstein was not brought down to ACC Media Days. He brought up the topic about how he brought two quarterbacks before that. He didn't want to bring any superstition into bringing Eli Holstein down because the last two quarterbacks didn't work out when they brought him down to ACC Media Days. I mean, it's a whole different team. I don't read too much into it. The biggest thing that I tell people is the truth. I mean, he always takes seniors down. I mean, Eli Holstein's a redshirt sophomore. And I think that when you look at everything, Eli will be the starter going into the season. I can imagine guys like Mason Heinschel and Cole Gonzalez will certainly push Eli Holstein going into camp here and certainly push him throughout camp. But Eli Holstein's going to be the starter. Do I think there's a long leash for Eli Holstein going into this season? I don't believe so, because I think Mason Heinschel has certainly proven himself to be a good quarterback so far during camp. Now, he hasn't had that game-like experience, so you could certainly have the question marks there of potentially what could that lead to. I can understand those question marks of what that could potentially be down the line for Pitt. But at the end of the day, Eli Holstein is your starter. That is a true fact. That is the way it is. That's what it's going to be going forward for these Pitt Panthers going into the season. He's going to be the starter. They certainly did a tour whenever he came back. They talked about, they went on 93.7 The Fan. Eli Holstein certainly mentioned a number of good things and topics of there. Number one being, this team on offense is farther along this camp because it's the year 2 of this offense, which is a really good thing overall, in my opinion. I think year 2 of this offense, I expect this offense to take those next steps of what Pitt needs to do to be more consistent. Obviously, Pitt riding a 6-game losing streak right now between injuries, bad football overall towards the end of the stretch. Obviously, Eli Holstein did not play the last 3 games of the season, which was certainly noticeable. And his time as a starter, Eli Holstein was 7-1. Certainly led Pitt to a 7-0 start. His 2 losses came to, really one loss came to SMU, and then he started the Virginia game. That game became a loss after halftime. But the biggest thing that I look at, and you look at those comments from Pat Narduzzi, you look at those comments from Eli Holstein, that the team is clearly very much in terms of better spirits about where they are in learning this offense. I think that's a very big perspective. I've heard a lot of people talk about how they feel much more comfortable going into the season, being able to take that up tempo of what they want to build, every 10 to 13 seconds, being able to run another play. Guys are very much in tune with that, with Eli Holstein returning, Desmond Reed returning, Kenny Johnson returning, has done a great job with J.J. Laster, the wide receiver coach at Pitt, being able to coach the new wide receivers on how they were able to run their new offense. I think that's very important to what Pitt wants to do going forward. Then the offensive line play. The offensive line, if I had to put a mirror on it right now and to put a starting five out there, I would put left tackle Jeff Percy, the transfer tackle from University of Michigan. Right now, I put Jackson Brown at left guard. Came over from the University of California. Obviously, legacy name. His dad, Tony Brown, played here at Pitt, was a legendary football player. I expect Jackson Brown right now to be the incoming camp starter at left guard. Lyndon Cooper at center. B.J. Williams at right guard, and then Ryan Bayer returns back to his natural spot and has really taken over the right tackle position. A lot of great conversations I've had about how well Ryan has returned back to right tackle at his natural position. Expect that right tackle position to finally be it all tuned in and basically Pitt in a really good spot when it comes to allowing those guys to really venture together, build together those starting five. But then your backups, Pitt does have a really good amount of guys in the turnstile when it comes to more depth. Kendall Stanley will still certainly fight for a position when it comes to a guy like Jeff Percy at left tackle. Kendall Stanley can also play at the guard position. He'll battle with Jackson Brown at left guard. I also believe when you look at a guy like Keith Gouveia, he can certainly play left guard. He can play center. From everything I've heard, they love him as a center as well, so he can certainly move in between and out there. Ty Ray is a guy who can play tackle and play guard. He's very elusive there. Isaiah Montgomery can play right tackle or right guard. So right now, just right there off the bat, and obviously, too, Ryan Coretta. You've got 5 guys behind the guys you have right now. So you've got 10 guys who you say, man, you got a lot of good opportunities there and a lot of potential for guys who can just go in there and step in if they needed to, if they had an injury this year. Let's see here. Look at some of the comments. We'll get to the comments here. I know Adam, obviously in here, WRW Pitt. Appreciate everyone being here. Again, if you're over on YouTube, hit the like button and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it, and it certainly helps us out. Get some water here. We'll get to comments, guys, here pretty soon. But the one thing I wanted to talk about, too, when you look at Eli Holstein not going, again, to me, it's not a big deal. When Pat Narduzzi comes out and talks about how Eli Holstein is a starter, I think that's a very good comment and a very much enticing, endorsement to Eli Holstein. The one thing that was very noticeable to me, though, during ACC Media Days was the fact that Pat Narduzzi did talk about how Eli Holstein was not 100% during spring ball. He is 100% now. That would make a lot of sense about why maybe that first 2 weeks Eli Holstein did not perform well. The last 2 weeks he did perform well. That makes a lot more sense into why Eli did not perform at a high level with during the spring camp. So we certainly did talk about that a lot, about why that was there. Also, too, Raphael Poppy Williams. He had surgery on both thumbs. He had torn ligaments in both of his thumbs, which led to the major issues at the end of the year of him trying to catch the football. Did not do a really good job of catching the football. That is the reason why he had surgery to get those 2 ligaments and both of his thumbs corrected. So he's back at 100%. Deuce Spann is 100% again after his injury at Florida State. The transfer wide receiver, Kenny Johnson, he's back obviously at 100%. Then you got Kateris Blue Hicks coming in from Louisville, which is a really good thing. I think he'll be a lot better of a job when he comes in here. I think he'll actually be a very good wide receiver for Pitt because of the speed and elusiveness. He does fit this Cade Bell offense pretty well when it comes into producing at this level. But the biggest thing for me is the conversations that you heard during media days, the conversation around injury reports, that kind of stuff. I was laughing so hard when I saw that because how truthful will those injury reports be? We don't know. I mean, we were certainly joking around that really everybody on the 100-man roster is going to be questionable to play coming week 1 through week 12. So that'll be fun to watch. But Eli Holstein getting the endorsement from Pat Narduzzi on 93.7 The Fan when he was back here talking about how he said Eli is the starter. He also said that Eli's the starter down at ACC Media Days. And again, he took veteran players. Javon McIntyre Sr., Lyndon Cooper Sr., Kyle Lewis is senior, and Desmond Reed is senior. All those guys were seniors. I would expect Eli Holstein to be back next year as well. If he's back next year, he'll certainly be up here because obviously they usually take those redshirt juniors or redshirt seniors or true seniors. So I would expect him to potentially get on to ACC Media Days next year. Not a big deal for me. Personally, I think the only thing that bothered me was the reason that he claimed he didn't take Eli Holstein, saying that, well, we took more of upper level class guys, and that we didn't take a quarterback this year because the last two quarterbacks we brought didn't pan out well. So like a superstitious type of thing. Those type of comments from Narduzzi just to be honest, really do piss me off because it just doesn't make any sense. It's a whole new team. I mean, you're a head football coach for a Power 4 program. Those kind of comments should not be being made. I mean, at the end of the day, it's time for Narduzzi to get back in the saddle where this year Pitt's expected to win between 8 to 10 games. I mean, that's where it should be, where, Pitt should be winning 9 to 10 games to be relevant. And if they're not achieving that, Pat Narduzzi should not be the head football coach at Pitt. And I think there's going to be a lot of dialogue and a lot of conversations behind the scenes on what that looks like. And there are some other things that really Pat Narduzzi does that I'm also not in tune with, which leads me to, the other topic here. Let me see here if I can pull it up. Let's see here. Let's see if it pops up here. It's not going to pull up there, but I think the article is not free with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But the conversation was really around the GM spot. But before we go into that, Pat Narduzzi also did talk about at ACC Media Days the rivalry game between Pitt and West Virginia. He talks about, a lot about what really we have talked about here on the show. When you look at rivalry games, it's so important with the way that the conference realignment's going. He talked about how, West Coast teams are in the Atlantic Coast Conference. You're losing a lot of those regional games. It's important to keep those regional rivalries. And he talked about how the game with West Virginia is loved by the fans, by the players, by the coaching staff. It's intense. There's no love lost. And he also talked about how if other people had power, if they could potentially move some games off the schedule to put West Virginia on the schedule for 26, 27, and 28. Because if you don't know, this is actually right now the last year of the backyard brawl until it takes a hiatus till 2029. That's another thing that keeps people always up in the air. That's another conversation people have talked about, that it's going to be a 3-year break, really 26, 27, and 28, and it's back in 29. So they're talking about potentially moving games off the schedule. My thing about that is you watch the college football is right now. Those games are so put off into the future. How many games can you really move around? Also, if you do cancel a game, you have to pay a fine. And usually the fines between $1 to $2 million. Indiana recently just canceled a game with Virginia, putting Kennesaw State on there. Kurt Cignetti's comments on that, talking about the SEC and how people, how they run their programs and how they run their scheduling. At the end of the day, Indiana didn't face anybody last year for the first 8-9 weeks of the season. So I don't know where the hell he's coming off from. I mean, in the SEC, they have rivalry games on the out-of-conference schedules with the ACC. We've certainly seen that with Kentucky, Louisville, Florida, Florida State, Miami, Florida. You've got Georgia Tech. Texas is going out of conference to face Ohio State this year. A lot of Notre Dame games in between there. And the ACC, look at Pitt, for instance. Pitt's facing West Virginia and Notre Dame. That's 10 Power 4 conference teams. Indiana's not doing that. So the Big Ten does a lot of talking for a league that's not in terms of, they talk about depth. They're very top heavy, like every other conference. I mean, it's the conference in the Big Ten is belonging to Ohio State and Oregon. And then the next tier, you have Penn State. And then that next tier now is Michigan because of the new hire there, which, with Moore. He really has to get Michigan back to where it was last year. Michigan had 6 or 7 losses last year. That just can't happen. So it's going to be something very interesting to watch. Brian Thompson with the super chat, $5 super chat. Brian, thank you, sir, as always. Will the O-line keep Holstein healthy this year? Under 2 sacks a game, this offense is built on quick passes, right? This is a very good comment. And again, thank you for the super chat as always. Do I think they keep him healthy this year? I think it's going to be better this year. One, because Jeff Percy, because of the depth they had at Michigan. Michigan does, in my opinion, I think Michigan and Notre Dame are in 2 just separate leagues in terms of being able to recruit offensive linemen. And when you look at it, they were 2 different types of schools where I think the biggest thing for me is you look at overall, the level of depth that we have this year. We went into last year with not a lot of depth. and it showed very quickly. When we lost Branson Taylor, that was a problem. Then we lost Lyndon Cooper for a period of time. That was a problem. We lost Ryan Jacoby for a period of time. That was a problem. For this year, I do believe they are. Left tackle being someone completely different. I think Jeff Percy would have started at Michigan if it was not as deep as what they usually are. He's going to be a very good addition here this year. 6'7", 320 pounds. He's actually very athletic for his size. I think he'll actually do a good job this year. He'll go into camp as the projected starter, but he'll work and he'll fight with Kendall Stanley for that position right there. Jackson Brown at the left guard position. I think he's built for the guard position. One of our bigger offensive linemen as well. Transferred in from Cal. Had over 20 Power 4 offers. Expect him to play this year. He had a lot of good opportunities last year to get some playing time. A number of games, the first game he struggled in against Clemson, which was understandable. I mean, he was going against a day one draft pick at defensive end at right tackle in his first start ever. He had a lot of good opportunities last year. He's talked about how a lot, comfortable he is on the offensive line. I think he's going to battle for that left guard position along with Keith Gouveia, who's got a lot of potential, a guy who has got a lot of snaps between, in the group of five where he was down at Richmond, did a really good job. They call him an old school offensive lineman, truly embraces violence. You love to hear that. So he's going to battle there. Lyndon Cooper and Ryan Coretta battling at the center position. Keith Gouveia can also play center. I thought he played a good job at center during the spring game, which was really good to watch. So you watched a lot of good depth there. Isaiah Montgomery got a lot of good snaps last year. He's backing up there, but BJ Williams and the right tackle position. Ty Ray can also move into those positions as well. I think they have a lot of talent there. And I think there's a lot more depth than we had last year because you really had 5 guys last year with Pitt. Everybody else didn't have any snaps behind them. We certainly watched that. The offense slowed down. Those were issues. I think that the biggest thing for Pitt moving forward this year is those guys staying healthy. Number one, staying healthy. We got to keep those guys on the field. If guys do get hurt, we do have those guys that can step up, but I think you can talk to any offensive coordinator. They want those starting 5 to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing. If they stay healthy, I think we protect Eli Holstein a lot better this year because it's year 2 of this offense as well and understanding the scheme. That is the number one thing is getting the offensive line, the quarterback, and the offensive coordinator to understand why they're calling certain plays, why they're calling certain protections. Also, Eli Holstein being a better job at calling protections on both sides of the offensive line and understanding why they're calling them. That's a major factor there as well. The bigger thing, too, is Cade Bell needs to be better in year 2 than he was in year 1. I think in the first 7 to 8 games, you saw very good things from Cade Bell, but then also you saw at the end of the year, you saw a lot of question marks and way he was calling. It's almost like his offense got figured out. The Cal game was the first start of that. I think there were still some plays out there that Eli missed. I think he'll be much better this year in terms of what he's looking for because he was a redshirt freshman. People forget that as well. He was a redshirt freshman last year. Now being a redshirt sophomore, he'll have a lot more experience going into this year, which will be fun to watch. But overall, when you watch it, Cade Bell needs to be a better play caller this year than he was last year because last year's play calling will not work this year. A lot more teams now have all the film they need to watch. They're certainly going to be able to know what they're going to do within the short game, the passing game. Be creative. Be able to find ways to get your playmakers, guys like Kenny Johnson, Deuce Spann, Raphael Poppy Williams, C.J. Lee. C.J. Lee will be back healthy. Finding ways to get those guys to football and also to incorporating in the run game with Desmond Reed, Jules Goff, Jakarian Boozy Turner, the true freshman who I expect to play a lot of football at the running back position this year for Pitt. I expect those guys to get a lot of carries. Desmond Reed will be a very major threat like he was last year out of the backfield, involving him one-on-one with linebackers, creating those mismatches on the defense. I think that's going to be an important factor. But for Cade Bell, Desmond Reed cannot be your only threat because when, for me personally, talking to numerous coaches around the league, it almost became as if other teams were just planning for Desmond Reed at that point, and then Pitt was adjusting from there. That can't happen. Utilize all your assets that you have on this football team. Utilize Kenny Johnson, who needs to step up and prove he's a wide receiver 1 this year. Deuce Spann, who comes in from Florida State. He's finally healthy this year. He's projected to be a starter last year. Ends up getting hurt, doesn't play. He needs to show a lot this year. Katuris Blue Hicks, I think he's going to be a guy to watch when it comes to the slot position of what Pitt wants to do, especially with getting the ball out down the football field, down the hashes. That'll be fun to watch. Jake Overman, we'll see how he continues to develop. He came in as a guy that we thought was going to be just a blocking tight end. Did a hell of a job in the pass game this year. Last year he did a great job in the passing game. This year, We'll watch and see how he develops as the number 1 tight end this year. That'll be fun to watch as he goes down the seams, be able to create mismatches, lines up outside, being able to find different ways to move him around and get those passing games going. But to your point, Brian, yeah, built on quick passes that can go in and out, especially on your slant routes, especially on your bubble screens, but being able to work down the field. You want to have that opportunity where the offensive line is able to give you 2 to 3 seconds to where you're able to launch it down the field. Like we watched in the West Virginia game last year with Kenny Johnson, Eli Holstein. I mean, when Eli Holstein had time, you saw the bombs he was able to throw down the football field and numerous great plays that Kenny Johnson that he made down the football field. And then you watch guys like Desmond Reed who were able to go down the football field 20, 25, 30 yards. You were able to create those plays. So you want to have a mix and match almost. Be able to have that threat that you're able to throw it on the short passes that you don't need a lot of time. But also, too, you have those deep threats like a Deuce Spann, who's a 6'4" guy that runs a 4.40. Kenny Johnson down the sideline. And on the inside, Raphael Poppy Williams, Katuris Hicks, C.J. Lee, all three of those guys. When it comes to on the inside, Zion Fowler-El, we'll see how he fits into the offense on the outside part of the football field. It's going to be interesting. But Pitt needs to be better in terms of play calling from Cade Bell, allowing more guys to get involved. That's really a major factor going forward for Pitt this year. If they're going to be a good football team, you got to be able to do it. You got to be able to show multiple different factors of how they're able to show we can involve multiple people, not just Desmond Reed. Desmond Reed cannot be your only threat this year. Kenny Johnson needs to step up. Deuce Spann needs to step up. Jake Overman needs to step up. C.J. Lee and Raphael Poppy Williams, year 2 in the Power 4. They need to step up. Katuris Blue Hicks had opportunities. Louisville actually has a really good wide receiving core, so it made sense for him to go out and find an opportunity to play right away. He's going to have that opportunity to be there as well. You got to be able to really distribute the football, and that comes with being able to have the offensive line continue to block and give it a certain time period. You're saying under 2 sacks a game. I think there may be some games that you'll see under 2 sacks, but we'll see. I think there's a lot of good teams in the ACC when you look at the defensive lines. I mean, on average, I would probably say, I'm good with, 2 or 3, no more than 2 or 3 sacks a game, just to be average. But under 2 sacks a game, I'd say Pitt would be in a world of, happiness if it was under 2 sacks a game. I think there'll be some games that you'll have that. But when you start get down towards the other portion of the schedule, Notre Dame's going to be a tough football team. Miami's going to be a tough football team. Georgia Tech is going to be a tough football team. They did a really good job of reloading their defensive line. Those last 3 games of the season will be tough. Louisville is going to be a tough football team. The backyard brawl when it comes to the backyard brawl down in Morgantown, a hostile environment, that's a game that Pitt should win. And I've been saying that since Neil Brown was fired, because I thought Neil Brown returning, you can have those type of discrepancies where no one's really won that home game yet that's been on the road or been able to win that road game yet. With Rich Rod coming in here and having 70-plus new players, there's no excuse for Pat Narduzzi to go down there and not win that football game. And I've been very adamant about that. If Pat Narduzzi does not win that football game, the heat gets turned up very quickly. And he better get his ass in gear. But I can tell you this, it would not be good if he loses that football game, because there's just no reason. There's no reason to lose it. That's a whole entire brand new team, brand new scheme on offense, brand new scheme on defense, brand new coaching staff, brand new players. They're going to need 3 or 4 games to figure out who the hell they have. They don't even know who their quarterback is at this point. Between Nico Marchiol and the Texas A&M transfer, I think right now Nico Marchiol would go in as the projected starting quarterback, but who knows? They might try out their 2 or 3 quarterbacks. Do I think that's a great idea for West Virginia? Not really, but they may do that, and that's something they hit the plan for. But overall, I think that the offensive line can protect Eli Holstein this year. It has been upgraded. With a guy like Jackson Brown going in there, you still have Kendall Stanley who could fight for that spot. He could play guard. Jeff Percy playing left tackle. You could have new offensive linemen right there, 2 new offensive linemen. Keith Guvia behind Lyndon Cooper. Lyndon Cooper, I mean, we have seen a lot of conversations from national media talking about the projection and PFF grades that Lyndon Cooper got last year. He is a bona fide starter on this offensive line. He's a leader on this offensive line. And when PFF guys and National Football League scouts talk to me and they say, hey, this kid's really good, he's got an opportunity to play in the National Football League, and we saw him grow as the season went on, and you went and saw him during the spring camp, you said, this kid can play. I think it's a major factor. If they can get those guys, Jeff Percy, Jackson Brown or Kendall Stanley at left guard, and then that whole entire right side of the line being able to cohesiveness to play together, they can have a chance to really have a good offensive line, but they have to prove it. They have to prove it. And as I've said before, we will not know what type of football team that that we have as fans. We don't know what type of football team that Pitt will have this year until week 3. We'll know what type of football team this is on week 3 when they go to Morgantown and for the backyard brawl. That's when I'm going to start really grading this team, because obviously if they struggle against, Duquesne, or they struggle against Central Michigan, then you can really say we're in trouble this year, because that just should not happen. But I don't expect that to happen. I expect those 2 games to go the way they should, 2-0, going into the backyard brawl down in Morgantown, West Virginia. Those games will pop up, but we're going to find out what football team this is week 3. Not week 1, not week 2, week 3. When we find out, when Pitt goes down to Morgantown, a hostile environment, we're going to find out who they are and find out how badly does this team want to win this year and want to win an ACC title. Because as I've been posting online in the Twitter, obviously in Twitter, it's very simple. The opportunity is there for Pitt, but they need to seize the opportunity. The coaches can talk about winning an ACC title, getting into the playoffs. But guess what? The players got to want it. The players got to work their ass off. The players have to prove they can make it to that level. That 7-0 wasn't just a fluke. It's actually something to build off of and figure out what went wrong towards the end of the year, figure out how to stay healthy, don't have as many injuries as last year, find ways to be productive with the players that are on the football field at that time. That's what we're looking for. Thank you for the super chat, Brian. As always, guys, down below is the super chat button. If you want to make a super chat, we'll get your stuff up on the screen before anyone else. And as always, down below, we got over 600 people in here now. Hit the like button and subscribe. Michigan was 8-5. So Michigan was 7-5 during the regular season, and then they won their bowl game to go 8-5. Thank you. The 2021 season was fun. You see AD Green's plan coming together for the future. Pitt regular winning seasons in year 2, hoping this SEC background translates over to Pitt. For me, I think that people have been very critical of Allen Green because he's not talking out in the media. I mean, what is there to talk about besides, they're raising money. And the Panther Club recently put out here, you saw the projections over the past couple years. Guys, that was the most donors we've had ever at the University of Pittsburgh. And it's just the beginning. Anybody that I talk to in the Pitt facility, in the athletic department, talks about now, and this was sent to me from someone who actually is a donor to Pitt, basically sent me a message here. Let me pull it up here. JJ, if there's any time to invest in Pitt, it's now. Just letting you know. Not going to say who that was from and what donor that was from, but there's clearly a plan that is in place, and it's working. And Pitt is bringing in a really good amounts of donations, being able to bring in revenue. They've done a great job of hiring the right people from the SEC. 3 SEC hires that were connected to Allen Green. Kyle Bruce worked at Notre Dame, worked at Ole Miss, worked at Tennessee, was really an integral part in fan engagement, building a brand, marketing a brand, CFO, Chief Financial Officer. Those things are major aspects of what Pitt's looking to build in the future, and they've done a good job of bringing the right people in and allowing them to build those times and really build those people out. I think those are major factors. And when the Panther Club puts out there, this is the most successful year they've had in donations, it continues to rise. And then Allen Green puts out a tweet and says, we're just scratching the surface at Pitt. There's so much other opportunities when it comes to business development and building corporate relations and corporate sponsorships and being able to build those marketing attributes and build those marketing dollars. There's plenty of different opportunities out there, but you needed a leader that saw that. Heather Lyke had no interest in that kind of stuff. Heather Lyke had no interest in NIL. That's a complete opposite with Joan Gable at the helm as a chancellor here at Pitt, and Allen Green being brought in. And that is a major factor that, Joan Gable brought Allen Green in for that reason, to raise revenue, build revenue at the University of Pittsburgh. And so far, and the numbers show it, we've had the most donations ever at the University of Pittsburgh under Allen Green's leadership in the past 10 months. It's not a fluke. Those are facts. Those are hardcore facts, and they continue to build. But now, the biggest part moving forward, Pitt needs to be a consistent winner. And that's on the football coaches, and that's on this football team. You have everything you need. Go win football games. It's that simple. Sharpshooter Sports Talk. If you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe to his show. Tremendous job. JJ, good to see you, brother. Brother, good to see you too. Appreciate your support. Make sure you go to Sharpshooter Sports Talk on YouTube and like their channel and subscribe. I don't want to hear any excuses. 9-3 is the worst I expect. We should have at least 3 running backs in the rotation. Teams will be overly aggressive at Reed. He will be a decoy, but most others must step up. Paris, I couldn't agree more with you. I think that 9-3 should be the base. And I think that, we've given Pat Narduzzi plenty of time. He's in his 11th year 2 of this offense. But you look at the defense right now. I mean, you look at the linebacking core, Rasheem Biles, Kyle Lewis, Braden Lovelace, Jeremiah Marshland, Cameron Lindsay. Tremendous linebacking core that we have here. Then at the defensive tackle position, Nick James, Sean Fitzsimmons coming back as the 2 starters at the defensive tackle spot. Sean Fitzsimmons is going to be a major leader on that defensive line group. Behind them, Francis Breu, Jasir Whittington, Isaiah O'Neal. Those are 5 guys right there. Ty Uhas out of Pittsburgh Central Catholic. He'll get some time. That's 6 defensive tackles that you have right there. You can say, hey, they can play some damn good football. So you have the defensive tackle room that's there. The DN room is where I have the most questions. Jimmy Scott, thank God he's returning. He's a returning starter from last year. He will be one of those starters. I expect him to take that next step in his development. Had 6.5 sacks last year. I think he'll take that next step of being a consistent contributor for Pitt. On the other side, Jaden Moore. Jaden Moore, the 4-star the 4-star defensive end transfer from Oregon. I expect him to be that guy. After that, that's where I have the questions. I think the depth around the defensive end position needs to be proven as camp goes on. And we'll continue to watch because next week camp will start. Camp starts in a week. I expect us to find out more and more at the defensive end position. Again, Blaine Spires comes in from Utah State, a Youngstown kid. Joey Zielinski did a really good job during spring camp. I want to see that again during fall to even, to feel more comfortable with the defensive end position. Nate Temple, a returning defensive end. Maverick Gracio made some big splash plays last year. He'll be back again this year. But right now, the 2 guys that I'm the most confident in is Jimmy Scott on one side and then Jaden Moore. But after that, I think that we need to take a look and say, hey, these defensive ends got to prove themselves. I think right now we go into fall camp. That would be my number 1 weakness for the Pitt football team is the lack of depth right now that we have at defensive end. These guys need to prove themselves because that's where my questions lie with the defensive ends. And then at the quarterback position, Rashawn Murray, an All-American, comes up to play at the quarterback position, 6'2", has great length, great speed, did a really good job during camp. Watch out for a guy, Shadarian Harrison, step up into that role this year at the cornerback position. Then you return guys like Taman Lynham and Rashad Battle. Those 2 guys are back. Those will really be your top 4 defensive backs right there. And then there's one more in that group I'm forgetting about. Guys, help me out in the comment section if you do know it. But those are your 4 cornerbacks they have right there. And then at the safety position, you've got your 2 starters. Cruz Brookins, the Steel Valley, Whippeal, hometown hero. He'll be starting at one side. And then another Whippeal hometown hero and senior, Javon McIntyre, will start at that position. Behind them, you got Jesse Anderson. He'll be back. Kazir Baines comes in as a transfer. He'll be back there as well. So you got four safeties right there. I think Jaden Bonsu's a guy to watch at that linebacker position as well. He's been bumping back and forth between safety and linebacker. I think he's being able to learn both, but I think he's actually a guy who can really produce at the linebacker position. So he'll be fun to watch overall as we watch the season go on. I think he'll be a guy that, again, Jaden Bonsu, if you guys don't remember, the 4-star safety transfer from Ohio State, really a guy I think he'd be really impressive. He'll be a redshirt freshman this year, a guy who can really step up and be a major contributing factor. But overall, I agree. To your point here, Paris, Desmond Reed is going to be a major factor in terms of running the football and catching the ball out of the backfield. But one, Desmond Reed has to stay healthy. That's number one. And number two, the guys behind him, Joel Scoff and Jakirian Boozy Turner, need to be those guys that step up this year. And you hope to see them, be able to make, very good adjustments and then eventually hold the fort down until Derek Davis Jr. comes back and be able to really bring in opportunities where he could play. Let's see here. Stephen Keel, what do you think of all the preseason magazines have Pitt and national media having PSU number 1 or number 2 in the country and mostly picking them to win it? I think of the magazines when it comes to Pitt, you can understand that the question marks. I mean, people will say they're obviously bringing a lot of guys back. I think they have Pitt a little bit lower. You look statistically, Pat Narduzzi has overachieved when it comes to the Vegas number. I think Vegas has them at like 5.5 or 6.5. Pat Narduzzi in his 10 years has beaten the odds 9 out of 10 years. He'll go into this season. I think he'll beat it again. I think Pitt's going to be in that realm of where they are until they prove it. 7 to 10 wins is where they're going to be at. When it comes to Penn State's a very talented football team. I think. But, the questions that I have are a lot like everybody else when it comes to a lot of other national media members where they have a lot of question marks. Penn State hasn't won the Big Ten since, 2016? That's not good. They haven't proven that. They haven't proven to beat Ohio State. Ohio State has really owned Penn State. I mean, James Franklin's 1-11 versus Penn State. He's got a losing record against Michigan and Michigan State as well. He's got a losing record against Oregon. I mean, that's a major factor. I think those two teams, Ohio State and Oregon, really should be the two contending factors and really the two favorites. I think Jim Knowles will be a really good defensive coordinator, but Penn State's always had a great defense in the Big Ten because the Big Ten's never been a big passing league. They're about running the football. That's why Iowa has been to the Big Ten championship game numerous times, because that's all they do. They score maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns a game, and they can get to the Big Ten title game. Now, when you look at this overall conference together, when it's combined the way it is, I mean, the question mark that I have is Drew Aller. Drew Aller is able to play a really good brand of football when it's against, Rutgers. When you look at Rutgers or Northwestern or Minnesota or Iowa, that's great. When does he show up against guys like Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan? He struggled against Ohio State again last year. Ohio State is not going to Happy Valley this year. Penn State's going to Columbus. I think it's a major factor. I don't think Penn State wins that game. They got to face Oregon. I don't know if Penn State wins that game against Oregon. The one thing that's a major factor this year for Penn State is, they talk about 100,000 fans. I think from what I saw and people were talking about in reports, they got a lot of people that are very upset about how they're updating and renovating the Beaver Stadium. They're not going to have 100,000 fans in there. It looks like there's going to be a lot less with all that's going on, because obviously they're fixing that whole entire one side and just doing it on pieces, which is, what they can only do that because they can only have one place to play. That makes a lot of sense for Penn State, because they got to be able to only do one section at a time every offseason. So, I mean, overall, I think that having Penn State in the top three makes a lot of sense because of the talent they have returning. I think they probably have the best running back combo in the nation, in my opinion. I think they got a great running back room. I think they're going to – you got some new offensive linemen up front. That's a number one thing I think that people don't realize. They lost a good bit of guys up front. That's a big question mark. We'll watch and see what they do there. But to call them the favorites and the favorites to win a national title, I think is just laughable to me, because they haven't – I mean, they made it to the playoffs last year. I think that was the easiest route for them. SMU was really their first ever round of going into the playoffs, first year in the P4. They did a great job during the season. They scored a lot of points. They were great in warm weather, but then went to that cold weather and it was just off. Just SMU did not play well in that cold weather up in Happy Valley. If it was down south in like Atlanta or in a dome in Miami, or in a dome in Atlanta or in a Miami or something like that, I think the game's a whole different ball game, because Kevin Jennings just did not play well. The defense kept him in that game for really a quarter and a half where it was close. If Kevin Jennings actually throws decent passes, they're probably winning the game halfway through the second quarter. But they played back, so that cold weather got to them. So we'll watch. I think last year was probably the best bet for Penn State to go to the national title game. They blew it against Notre Dame, which was crazy. Notre Dame was missing 9 starters between defense and offense, and they still couldn't win. Penn State didn't complete one pass to a wide receiver. That is still mind-blowing to me. Not one pass completed to a wide receiver. Hopefully that's fixed this year. They got Trevor Pena coming in from Syracuse. Watched him up close in person. I think Trevor Pena is a damn good wide receiver, but we'll see what Andy Kotelnick is able to dial up. I think Andy Kotelnick is a great offensive coordinator, but James Franklin, if he's allowing, can he allow Andy Kotelnick to do his job? The big thing about James Franklin, he's got his hands on everything, especially offense, and that has been the major factor during the years of James Franklin. The only good years he had on offense were when Joe Moorhead was there. And Joe Moorhead basically said, I'm taking the reins on this offense if you want me to be the coordinator here. After that, he's had issues on offense. They got a lot to prove. They have a lot to prove. Drew Aller has a lot to prove. But I think it makes sense to put Penn State in the top 3. I really put them at 3rd in the Big Ten right now, behind Oregon, number 1, Ohio State, number 2, and Penn State, number 3, in my opinion. Let's see here. Yeah, I appreciate that, Jim. Sean Lee is another one who comes in. I think he'll be a guy that you can watch too this year. Thank you, sharpshooters. Hit the button. Hit the like button. Again, guys, down below, if you're not over on YouTube, head over to YouTube right now. Hit the like button down below. Hit the like button, subscribe, and share the show because it helps with the algorithm. This is a winnable schedule for is 8-2, ceiling to 10 wins. I would say, yeah. I mean, you're looking at 10 wins. I'd say your window is really 10 to 8 wins at that point. I agree, Derek. But there are still some damn good football teams on the schedule. I mean, Louisville's going to be a tough game this year. Louisville will be tough. Georgia Tech will be tough. Notre Dame will be tough. Miami's going to be tough. I mean, you have multiple ranked teams in there. Louisville will be ranked. Notre Dame is ranked. Miami's ranked. Those three teams are ranked. I think Georgia Tech was almost ranked towards the end there. The backyard brawl is always tough because it's a backyard brawl. But Pitt should win that game this year. And again, I've been adamant. They got to win that football game this year. You have a whole new team, 70-plus new players. It's a lot like Colorado that first year. They went 4-8 under a new regime because of that. Also, the reports out of Colorado on Monday morning, tomorrow morning, there's going to be a news conference with Deion Sanders and his medical team. Sounds like there's an opportunity where he may retire. So Colorado may be without a head football coach this year. We'll see what they do in terms of what that team looks like. So that'll be interesting. But to your point, Derek, I agree. It is an 8 to 10 win season. And if it doesn't hit that, me personally, if Pitt's for real about football, if they don't get 8 to 10 wins, then you got to let Narduzzi go. It's that simple. The revenue distribution I saw proposed is complete BS. It had football only getting 65%. It should be 80% to football, 50% to hoops, and 5% to the rest. Derek, where did you see that? I know that's not a fact at all. I can tell you right now from talking to people within the organization, it's 80 to 85% to football. If it's 85% to football, it would be 10% to hoops and then 5% to the rest. And a lot of that would really go to women's volleyball. They do a really good job there. But if it's 80% to football, 15% to basketball, and then 5% to the rest. But it's going to be between 80 to 85%. Yeah, I don't know where 65 came from. I don't know who told you that. But yeah, they're definitely wrong. But it is 80 to 85%. That is from across the board. 4 people have told me 80 to 85%. That's where they're at. I mean, that's a consistent message from inside the athletic department. Let's see here. Sean Lee. Yeah, Sean Lee. He'll be a guy that plays the cornerback position. So you got 5 guys at the cornerback position. Rashawn Murray, Shadarian Harrison, Taman Lynham, Rashad Battle, and Sean Lee. Those are the 5 guys, which is going to be really good for them. Saw it from Zeiss and on 3 board. Yeah, I don't agree with that at all. Yes, it's definitely not 65%. I think that's probably a guess on his end, but maybe hearing it from somebody else. But I do not agree with that at all. I was told from numerous sources that's 80 to 85%. That's where they're at. That's what I was told. All right, let's see here. Especially, too, with under Alan Green, I can tell you right now, obviously, too, they'll be 80, 85%. But I also was told that the Alliance 412 will pick up on the back end for the non-revenue sports and the other sports. I've been told that as well. That's going to be a major factor along with football as well because they're looking to go over that $20.5 million mark, which I was told as well. Lastly, we're already at 48 minutes, guys. These shows go so fast, guys. It's just a lot of fun to talk to you guys. Right now, between YouTube, let me see, looking up here. Between YouTube and X, we are at 639 people. If you haven't done so, head over to YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you guys like it on here. Hit the like and subscribe. Lastly, let's see here. Pat Narduzzi talked about to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Let's see here. See if it pops up. Pat Narduzzi talked about to the press and to Pittsburgh Post-Gazette in a sit-down interview, which I was told, that talking about the general manager position, and I've talked about this before. Hold on here. Just getting news here. Okay. The 3 people, we've talked about this numerous times, how Pitt needs to hire a general manager. And I've been saying that they need to hire an in-house general manager. We've heard previously last year that Pat Narduzzi talked about how, Sean Whaley was the basically in name only general manager acting on behalf of Alliance 412 to help construct the roster. Pat Narduzzi recently met with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and talked about how two names, Adam Coultry and Graham Wilbur, who have both been at Pitt since 2015 under Pat Narduzzi, are expected potentially. He was hinting at potentially changing their names and their titles to assistant general managers and really constructing the roster. For me, that's just not good enough. Sean Whaley should be the general manager, behind the scenes for Pitt on a consistent basis hired, or they should go out and find somebody else and really have one general manager. I think it's pretty crazy to have two people that could potentially be the general managers for Pitt. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's a good system. I think this is Pat Narduzzi fighting, the administration almost to say he doesn't want to report to anybody else. Obviously, he doesn't like the situation with Cal, which I agree to an extent. I think, the Cal situation with Ron Rivera and Stanford situation with Andrew Luck being the heads of, the heads of college football and their administration at those two places. I don't agree with that at all, because then what's the point of an athletic director? I mean, your job is to take over them and watch those leagues and watch those two sports, those football teams. I don't agree with that, but I do agree that Pitt needs an in-house general manager, and I don't agree with those two guys being a part of it. I can tell you this right now. I mean, I'm just kind of shocked that overall we've, that could be the answer. Me personally, Pitt should follow suit what other people are doing, and that's to hire outside the organization and to get a real GM. And personally, me, I'm good with, I'm sorry, no, I said Sean Whaley, Doug Whaley. I'm sorry. Sorry about that, guys. I'm thinking about Sean Fitzsimmons. Doug Whaley, who I think should be the general manager for Pitt, in my opinion. That's my overall thoughts and what Pitt should do. When it comes to promoting people from within, or for instance, if it's not Doug Whaley, I mean, heck, I'd even put Carlos Zofko as a guy who should be able to be the potential general manager, because he knows talent. He's able to go in there and negotiate contracts. I think he'd be actually a good position for that, for being to know who can actually be paid for those two positions. So we'll see. Let me see here. Guys, we're at the 52-minute mark. Do we have any more questions or super chats? Again, Brian Thompson, appreciate the super chat buttons here. Again, I appreciate that. Let me see here. Don't see any more super chats, guys. I think that's really the only topics I have for tonight. I know the Wi-Fi, for whatever reason, the show is sputtering a little bit, so that may be it if you're here tonight. But, guys, as always, cannot thank you enough for tuning in to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Guys, it's truly been a pleasure. If you haven't done so, hit the like button below. Like, subscribe. We'll have more shows during the week. We'll be filming them and releasing them during the week. We'll be back on the saddle as Pitt football returns to the South Side. Fall camp begins here in a week. It'll be a fun game to watch. I mean, a fun week of camp to watch. And we'll be having more and more updates as the season goes on, but as fall camp goes on. So, guys, truly appreciate it. As always, thank you for joining another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. As always and forever, hail to Pitt and hail the ACC. I'll see you next time.